before we get to Arkansas and Acuff and Calipari, Kate, before we get to maybe the game of the year between Vandy and Nebraska, before we get to the 1 seeds that have seemingly cruised, there's one that has scuffled just a little bit through their first 2 games. Let's talk about this increasing gap that we're seeing between the top seeds and everybody else. And as we pointed out a couple minutes ago in our discussion about Texas Gonzaga, yeah, that's an 11 over a 3, but it's a big conference over, you could still consider Gonzaga a mid-major, I think, based on what each school is able to spend when they're going out and acquiring players. The average margin of victory so far through 11 games for 1 and 2 seeds is 27.5 points. We've seen absolute domination by teams like Florida. We saw Michigan in the first round, as well as in the second round, Arizona in the first round over LIU. Now, some of those 116, 215 things, I think we expect to a certain extent, but Houston absolutely rolling A&M last night to 2 over a 10. Okay, so is this exactly what we should expect to be happening in these matchups with the higher seeds, or is it, I hesitate to say this, but is it almost too dominant?
I mean, it is almost too dominant, but it is also what we should be expecting based on the landscape of college basketball right now. I mean, you look at 2023, we had 3 double-digit seeds go pretty far. And, I mean, well, the Fairleigh Dickinson upset over, well, that was number 1 Purdue. That was a huge one. What years did we have? Even like when we had San Diego State, like they're not I don't think they were a double-digit seed, but you would consider San Diego State kind of a mid-major.
Yeah,
smaller,
I consider for the purposes of this conversation. Yeah. For the purposes of this conversation, I think Mountain West still slots in as a mid-major. They're not a power conference.
Like, we're not even seeing things like that happen anymore. Yeah. And so I think this is going to be the norm going forward. We didn't have any double-digit seeds make it last year. And Texas right now, who was a first 4 team, is the only one advancing as a double-digit seed. And Texas, to Mark Few's point in his postgame, has a lot of resources. I did just a quick little, how much does Gonzaga basketball have in NIL every year to spend? 2 to 3 million. Like, you're not paying guys top dollar, which means that was a school that players went to because they knew they would make it far in the tournament. They knew Mark Few was a really good coach. Like, you had top level talent. There's a lot of NBA guys that came out of Gonzaga, and I don't think we're going to be seeing that quite as much anymore. And that's going to translate to those types of teams not going very far in the tournament because of, I mean, I don't necessarily blame them. If I get $300,000 at Gonzaga versus 1.5 mil at Texas, yeah, right. Chris, I'm going for the 1.5, right? I think most people would.
We had a run for, I want to say it was 15 or 16 years out of 18 or 19 from 2008 up through 2024, where it was almost an annual occurrence where you would get a 13, a 14, or a 15, maybe even a 16, like you mentioned, Fairleigh Dickinson, UMBC in 2018, where we would get 1 or 2 of those every year. And it feels impossible at this point. To bring in Arkansas again for a second, that game against Hawaii in the first round on Thursday afternoon, that wasn't really a game. It wasn't. No. The 13s, Cal Baptist put a little bit of a scare into Kansas if we want to bring up another 13 seed, right? But Hofstra, Bama, not really a game. Troy, Nebraska, since we talked Huskers earlier, not really a game. And I'm just using the 13-4 matchups here as an example, but it feels like there's a much wider gulf or gap between those and the top 3 to 4 seeds in every region now than there was even, say, 3 years ago. It feels increasingly unlikely that we're going to see a St. Peter's or a Furman or any of these teams that used to jump up and bite somebody in the first round and maybe even sometimes go on to the Sweet 16. Increasingly unlikely that we're going to see that in the NIL era.
Chris, go back to that Kansas Cal Baptist game. Kansas didn't score for like 10 minutes of that second half. I was watching
Right.
games at a friend's house, and one of the guys, he couldn't see the score bug at the bottom of the screen based on where all the TVs were situated. And he's like, Kate, let me know when Kansas gets to 70, because he had some, team total over. And I was like, yeah,
Right.
I gotcha. 10 minutes later, he's like, why didn't you let me know they got to 70? I'm like, because they didn't. They haven't scored in like 8 minutes. And they still won by 8. And like, yeah, it was a sweat, but like, Cal Baptist still couldn't capitalize on a very good Kansas team not hitting a field goal for 3/4 of the second half. That was crazy.
Again, we're still getting the moments, right? Like, I want to be clear about this. This isn't to run down the NCAA tournament. This isn't to take the air out of the March Madness balloon. And I'm sure we'll get at least one or two of those moments again later today. Much like we got in Texas Gonzaga, much like we got with Nebraska surviving Vandy. We'll still get those. Arkansas surviving High Point, but it's just not quite the same when it's fairly unrealistic. It's why High Point pushing Arkansas the way they did last night felt like such a big deal, because we were at a neighbor's house. Our son, who fills out a bracket every year, it's a family affair with us. Everybody drops a few bucks. Hey, get the allowance out, kid. If you're going to be in a bracket, we're not paying for you. He filled out a bracket and had High Point going to the Sweet 16. So he's playing with his friends outside, but every 30 seconds runs back over to be like, Dad, look at the score. Dad, look at the score. I'm like, I know. The TV is on. We're good. We know what's happening. But it feels increasingly unlikely that we're going to get as many of those as we used to.